we're back. They tried to keep us off the air, and we're back now. I restarted because Facebook was being a little wobbly, in my opinion. Or maybe it was my computer. It needed like a restart. You know, you got to clean that stuff out. So we're back. All of the stuff I did before that was live and in the moment, like the pouring of the tea into my tiger mug here, the lighting of this cool lamp. Actually, we're gonna turn the lamp off. We're gonna relight it so that we can do ourselves together as one. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm gonna get out my lighter. I'm gonna click on Adam Quiney so I can make sure I see my little thingy here. There we go. It looks like it's live. Delightful. So fun. I really look forward to these Fridays. Like the magical lamp again, hey Andrew, again. It's really, this is one of the most fun things I get to do. I get to do a lot of really fun stuff during work, but like these Friday sessions with all of you that show up, it's such a treat. So I've got this cool USB chargeable lighter, and the way it works is you push the button and it puts an arc between these two, I don't know what these would be, diodes perchance. Got this cool pewter lamp, a pewter oil lamp that I bought in Quebec. Oops, it's and there's a company called Les Artisans in Quebec, which is all local craftsmen from Quebec selling products. And I saw these little desk lamps and I was like, that's basically the coolest thing ever. Let's get that flame just a little bit lower. All right, our Olympic torch has been lit. It's happening, everyone. I was sharing before we got cut off how much I love open flames in a protected way. So I got for Christmas or my birthday, my mom bought me this cool old oil lamp, which I went out and bought. First of all, that's a beautiful shape on that hurricane. Isn't that gorgeous? I think that's really appealing. I went out and I bought kerosene to run the lamp and lit my lamp. I was excited in my office and immediately was like, my whole office smells like a gas station. This is gross. And so I learned kerosene is quite smelly, better used outside, and indoors paraffin is the lamp oil that you want to use. So then I went to the store to buy paraffin, and all that they had at Canadian Tire was scented lamp oil. So there was like nectarine and ginger or cool water, which is what I ended up buying because it sounded cool. And I'm wondering, is that like a Davidoff cool water, like the cologne scent? The cologne I wore in like my first undergrad degree? I don't know. We'll find out. So that's what's that. Is that a saying? Maybe not. All right. How do I see? I've got a dashboard. Facebook looks like it's changed this up on me. I can see comments, but where's my let me see my title bar, Facebook. I can't see the description I set for this. Did I not set a description for this live? I must have. I'm not a dummy. I'll just use my Roam here so that I've got it up. Okay, well, let's see. Things for me to share about this week. I guess it's been a little bit since we've done one of these lives with special celebrity guest star Adam Quiney. Last week I had Jared on the show, which was a great amount of fun. I'd gone out of town with my friends and spent some time in Lake Cowichan. We've had some terrible flooding here in Victoria, and right now, actually not here in Victoria, but here in my province, British Columbia. And right now I'm looking out this window and it's nothing but blue sky, but I'm told the storms are coming. So that's on the agenda. TV I've been watching lately is in the morning I get on the Peloton bike and I watch Foundation, the Foundation series, which I'm a huge Isaac Asimov fan. Isaac Asimov is one of the most prolific writers ever. He wrote something like 250 science fiction books. And his most famous series is called The Foundation. And it's a series that spans over the course of, I'll get the actual like length of time wrong, but like millennia, thousands of years is the span of this series. And it's about a galactic empire, meaning, you know, an empire that controls the galaxy, that's been set up and actually has influence across the galaxy, falling apart. So the galaxy is crumbling, the empire is crumbling, their rule is falling to pieces, much like the Roman Empire fell to pieces as time went on. And there is a historian or I guess you could call him like a scientist who's developed this science called psychohistory, which is the ability to predict into the future the path of civilization. What will happen predictably as time goes on into the far future? And he can do this by abstracting out individuals. He can't tell you what I as an individual will do, but he can tell you predictably a civilization of this size over the course of 300 years is probably going to come up against a crisis in 100 years' time. Don't know what it is, but that's predictable. Predictably, there'll be sort of like an insurrection at some point and stuff like that. So it's really compelling because this character who passes away as the show and the book series moves on, he's kind of got this tremendous amount of insight and this ability to stay like one step ahead of things as they're going. The series, Andrew, is called Foundation. And one of the things I found so remarkable when I was younger reading this series was that some of Isaac Asimov's earliest books had a few characters in them. And those characters made appearances throughout the entire, like, I think it was 30, 40,000 year span of his books, to the extent that, like, one of his earliest books, one of the characters in it ended up having an influence in the galaxy at the very end of this emperor's reign and everything that was happening. That blew my mind that someone would have the foresight and the capacity to write that way, to write with such a vision. Because for me, writing more than a blog post takes a lot of like, oh, fuck, how am I going to string this all together? How am I going to integrate this? What am I going to do that has this lead into that, into this? And he's got a character spanning 250 books, thousands of years. So I've been watching that series, which has been phenomenal. And I'm going to show you the book for the second series I've been watching that I really recommend to you. This is a collector's edition of this book because I really loved the original set of books and I wanted a nice one. So it's called Eye of the World, book one of the Wheel of Time series. I appreciate books for their content, and also I like books as art. So this is just a gorgeous copy of this book that I bought for myself and a former client who really loves the series. This is a phenomenal series. It's, I think, 13 books plus a prequel. It's a very epic world. Like, he's built up this beautiful world. There's a really cool magic system, which always is very compelling for me in fantasy fiction. And the core concept is that there's this thing called the source, which is access to magic. Those that can touch source have access to magic. And long ago in ages past, the world was broken by a male practitioner. And there's two halves to the source. There's the halves that men touch and the halves that women touch. And the male practitioner broke the world apart because there was some epic battle with the Dark One and all of that stuff. So now where we are, where this series takes place, is that men touching the source eventually go mad because of the taint. This man that broke the world open, classic man breaking a world open, he left this taint on the source. And so men can't practice with it, but women can. And what's happening in the series is the prophecy says that everything that happened in the past will come to happen again. It's almost karmic in a way. And so you're witnessing sort of this prophecy unfold. It's phenomenal. Andrew, I'm talking about two different series. So the first one I mentioned was The Foundation, which is phenomenal and I highly recommend. And then the second series I'm watching is The Wheel of Time. You can watch Foundation on Apple TV or download it from your illegal channels. And The Wheel of Time is available on Amazon Prime. It's about 4 episodes in. And I read the books up to about the 7th book. They're quite, I mean, as you can tell, that's a thick tome. How many pages is this? 670. So it's not like a light read. You're getting in for quite a bit. And so I read up to book 7, then kind of fell off and didn't bother going back, but it's phenomenal. And having read the books, watching the TV series is not a disappointment. It's not like, oh, I hate the way they did that. It's really cool, really exciting, good stuff. Great TV. Really well cast, too. I think they did a great job casting. So that's some of the stuff I've been excited about as of late. Just looking around to see if there's anything else I want to share before we get into topics, to the juicy stuff. I tried to leave some space in these topics today because often you guys watching have really great questions that then lead to, I'm just going to close my little magic box over here. that lead to really great extrapolations on our topic. So please bring your questions, share the things you're noticing as we talk about this stuff so that we can evolve something together rather than me just uh, saying stuff that I think you should hear. Oh, I got a haircut too. The sides are short, the top is big. I'm going for lots of hair here in the front, short on the sides. Okay, well, if you've come here by way of the podcast, you're probably like, what the hell am I listening to? Or you've probably already switched off. But if you haven't switched off, now we're going to get into the part where we talk about leadership and coaching and distinctions and cool stuff like that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is let's talk about you can't leave a place until you've been there. So to set this up, I believe this is a Zen saying. At least that's how I've been attributing it. I might apocryphally be doing so. But as far as I know, the Zen saying goes that you cannot leave a place until you've been there. And like so many really profound, sorry, let me provide just a bit more context before I dive into this. Where this is going to lead us is how we get caught with our anger and judgment and why they seem so persistent and why we can't seem to let go of them. So, like so many truly profound, wise aphorisms, like you can't leave a place until you've been there, they almost immediately, as soon as they leave our mouth, they become cliches. They become sound bites that sound good, but really don't have any impact. They don't have any meaning to us. We just sort of say them like zombies and don't really let them impact us, don't really think about it. We're just like, well, you can't leave a place until you've been there. Oh, yeah, you can't leave a place until you've been there. That's a good point. Yeah. Now my life's going to be different. No, it's not. So we want to look at this and why is this important? Why does this matter? How does this even show up? And the place we're going to do that is we're going to look at judgment and anger. So the relationship most of us have to judgment and or anger are that they're wrong. They're bad. Don't be judgmental. Don't have any prejudice, meaning any prejudgment of anything. You just shouldn't be judgmental. That's the fallacious should that society innocently, I would say, imposes on us. That's how we're raised, things like if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. Don't have any judgment. When we do express a judgment, that's nasty. Don't do that because that made the person sad. And so what we learn from that is I just shouldn't have judgments. We kind of, rather than looking at like, with a little more nuance, like, well, maybe it's the way I said that, or maybe there's something different I could have brought, or, we're not really trained by anyone with much skill and nuance here. Instead, it's just like a battle axe, a very blunt edged instrument. And the way that instrument strikes us is just don't have judgment. That's the best of all. Jesus didn't have judgment. You shouldn't either. That sort of thing. So the trouble with this is that our judgment of judgment, our insistence that we shouldn't have judgment, means that how we end up in the world is with judgment and then with a layer of I shouldn't have judgment over top of it. And what that does is it stops us from ever being able to just get down here to our truth and be like, oh, I've got judgment right now. I'm judgmental in this moment. I feel judgy about how you're showing up, what you're doing, who you're being, any of that stuff. And this makes it impossible for us to simply do something about it. As long as I'm the expression in the world of being judgmental while insisting that I shouldn't be judgmental and aren't judgmental, I can never get down to this thing. I'm caught on this layer. I'm kind of hooked. I'm stuck up here. And so consequently, this is how we get to that Zen saying. Because of this, I'm never really able to get here, and consequently, I'm never actually able to leave here. I cannot leave my judgment because I cannot arrive at my judgment. Consequently, I'm stuck with it. It just sits there. I can't turn around and go, I'm being fucking judgmental. What do I need to do to move past that? What's the part of me that's showing up as judgmental needing in this moment? What do I need from the world? What needs do I have? What do I have to move through my body? What do I have to go do to deal with that? This, bar none, is probably the most the biggest thing that has us all stuck and unable to move forward in our lives is that we are operating on top of a belief that we shouldn't be the way we are. And because of that, we can't actually be the way that we are. And as a result, we can't leave. We can't move off of it. Andrew wrote, one of my survival mechanisms is righteous loser. For those of you that don't know this term, survival mechanism is the set of strategies and compensatory mechanisms that we have kind of in response to our fear getting triggered. So when we get triggered and our fear shows up and is like, you might look stupid, Adam, part of my survival mechanism might be to condescend to you and make you feel stupid so that I diminish your intellect, and then I don't have to feel so stupid because I'm at least above you. It's like an automatic response. Adam feels afraid of being stupid, make the other person feel stupid. I can rest easy. So Andrew's sharing one of his survival mechanisms is the righteous loser. There's definitely been a place to be with this whole year. We're noticing that he's quite a judgmental person from the shadows. Totally, 100%, Andrew. Righteousness brings with it a lot of judgment, right? I've got the right thing, fuck you over there, etc., etc., etc. So, just trying to see if I need a sip of tea to see where I want to go with that. There's a whole host of things that we're unwilling to be with. And there was a moment where I was reflecting something to someone the other day. They were talking about surrender. And I was saying, it doesn't sound like surrender to me. It sounds more like resignation. And they got taken out by that. That was kind of an affront to them. That insulted them. They clenched. Their energy closed down and they tightened around that because to this person, resignation is not something they would ever want to be. And so again, that gives us another example of where here's a place that person can't leave because they can't come to terms with that's where they're at. This is a significant part of what a coach can provide you, is a reflection of what's actually going on that you're unwilling or unable to take a look at. And predictably as a human, when that happens, you're going to go, fuck that. That's not what I'm doing at all. That's not the way I am. That's not how I show up. I don't agree with you. I don't think that. I think what you're actually thinking, Adam, and seeing is this, and the reason that's showing up is blah, 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 blah. All of that justification and argument and everything serves to prevent you from being where there is for you to be. And it's not like you need to fabricate out of the blue, okay, God, I got to go and be judgmental because Adam told me I'm judgmental. No, you just need to be willing to stop resisting your truth that's already there. That's really tough for us because with all of the stories we're trained that we shouldn't be a certain way, it's hard to give ourselves permission to be where we already are. We're kind of like, fuck, if I admit to myself that I'm judgmental, then I'm really screwed because then what if I never leave there? Then what does that say about me as a person? And all of that kind of moralizing internally holds us in check. It keeps us at bay because we've got this layer of how I shouldn't be on top of how we're being anyhow, regardless of what we should or shouldn't do. It's a funny one for me. One of the places this shows up for me is around victimhood. I'm a staunch stand and commitment for leadership in the world, not as a position of authority, not as like a number of years of experience, but as a quality of being showing up moment by moment. A quality of being which gives you more access to choice, more choice in your life, and access to more power in your life, being the one to create whatever there's to create regardless of your circumstances, rather than at the effect of your circumstances. Oh, I was going to do this, but, so I guess I won't, at the effect. Oh, I'm going to do this, but now this is happening. How do I create this now that that new thing has happened? That's being at cause for what you want to create. So I'm a real committed stand for leadership, the capacity to choose our life as we want, the capacity to have an impact in the world, to make whatever we want to have happen. And consequently, it's really hard for me to give myself permission to be a victim. And when I'm feeling victimy, when I'm feeling righteous and judgmental of someone, and when I'm like, fuck that person for example, not wearing a mask, not because it's right to wear a mask, but because it's my belief that that's the good thing to do, I get victimy about it. Things would be different if not for that person, right? Woe is me. And it's really hard for me to simply sit and allow myself to be there because I'm always trying to like, what's the responsible thing to do here, Adam? How could you step more deeply into this? How could you be more of a leader? That's a great inquiry to be in, but before I can go to that, I have to be willing to be exactly where I am. I cannot leave victimhood until I'm willing to be the victim that I'm actually being. This takes a great deal of humility. It takes a lot of compassion and willingness to allow ourselves to be the human that we are. Most of us try, myself included, we try to just bypass that and go straight towards the spiritual, able to be with it all, turn the other cheek, nothing really bothers me. And all that does is it cuts us off from all of our opportunity. Micah, I think it's pronounced Berger, I'm not totally sure, asked me a question, which was, Adam, can you talk about, yes, this a couple of weeks ago, and then we're going to come to your question, Andrew. Can you talk, Adam, about creating a coaching platform and attracting clients and ways to recognize limiting beliefs? I talked about limiting beliefs, but I didn't touch on the first part of Micah's question, which was talk about creating a coaching platform and attracting clients. So I'm going to talk about this, but I want to be clear that ultimately this is a conversation not about coaching as a profession, but about leadership as a quality of being that I'm going to be speaking to. Most people approach coaching and leadership the way that the world is traditionally structured. And the way that the world is traditionally structured is do X, Y, and Z to get A, B, and C. So if you want to get a bunch of clients, you have to create a platform that draws them in. Funnels. That's the predominant approach. Build the funnel, click funnels, do all this, get funnels, just one more funnel, seriously. Have a funnel for your funnel, which will funnel them into blah, blah, blah. Funnels are what's up. Create a coaching platform so that you have a place to show up in the world, and then people will find you and come to you and blah, blah, blah. So there may well be ways to do that, and they may well, in fact, I'm quite certain they'll generate results, but I believe that that approach is, it creates short-term results with a fast fall off, and it creates a lot of ongoing input on your part. Ironically, because the fantasy of creating a platform with the right funnel is eventually you can just switch off and all this stuff keeps coming to you. You just keep putting out the ads and doing that stuff. But these people are coming to you because you're trying to sell them something. And they're coming to you because you're putting on some sort of like performance. There's some degree of like, come to me and you can have X, Y, and Z and all of that sort of stuff. You're actively working to attract people rather than going inwards. So it's an outward directed thing. How do I attract people? What do I have to do? What do I blah, blah, blah? Here's what I believe really works for the practice of coaching and leadership. Turning your sight inwards. So whenever coaches come to me, and a lot of them do, I often am in conversation with coaches because I'm a stand for them and committed to the gift of this work. The first thing they ask is, what should I do? What do you think I should really do, Adam? And the first thing I tell them is make hiring a coach a non-negotiable for you. So if you're budgeting for yourself for like the next year, 2 years, and you're planning like, okay, what can I afford? How can I make this work? Make sure that there's a line item in there that's like a minimum of $500 a month and that says hire my coach. Make it a non-negotiable, like not a I'll do this once I have enough money. Make it a line item the same way buying food, having TV, all of that stuff is essential for you. And the reason that that's so important, because that ensures that where your work is going to be directed is inward. Who am I being? Am I showing up in a manner that's in integrity with who I truly am? Am I not just voicing my opinion, but deepening into it? Am I discovering where the opinion I was certain about might no longer be quite so certain? And maybe there's a different way to relate to people that allows for even more available to me. As we do that, we stop trying to fish for people. We stop going outwards to try to attract people. And instead, who we become is innately attractive. We become magnetic. And the reason that we become more and more magnetic is because there is nothing as alluring and magnetic as full expression. Human beings fully expressed able to allow their being to be in the space and be responsible for all of its impact are incredibly magnetic. We want to be around them. And the funny thing about this, I remember it given to me by one of my early men's work teachers. He said, as you do more work, people just start to want to pay money to be around you. That's the weird thing about this. That's ultimately the path of coaching. You don't do the work so that people will pay you more money. You do the work so that your life continues to improve and become better, and you get to be more fully expressed and have a deeper experience of your life. And as a beautiful side benefit to that, that has people notice you like a signal cutting through the noise of the ordinary and go, what's the deal with Adam or John or Andrew or whoever? What's different about this guy? I want to know more. And the more time they spend with you, the more time they're like, wow, there's just a different experience when I'm with this person. That's how we create clients. So all of that work goes inwards, and then our job is to be willing to share that with the world, to publish our work, as Austin Kleon would put it. There's a million different ways we can do that. We can share by writing and publishing that somewhere, anywhere. We can share that by doing live videos like I do. You can share that by doing a podcast. You can share that by being a guest on a podcast. You can share that by doing doodles and posting them somewhere to the internet. Anything at all. All that matters is that we put our attention here and doing the work here, and then sharing that work with the rest of the world, giving people an opportunity to see the work. Notice that this is different from the hermit who goes and lives in a cave and just meditates for 20 years. That's great, but he's not really sharing that work with the world. Probably because the moment he interacts with the world, all of his zen is going to fall off of him. He's going to be kind of triggered and confronted. That's usually the way it goes when we remove ourselves from society in order to be able to be okay, to be fully expressed. It's not really the nature of this work. The nature of this work is, how can I be fully expressed? How can I be enlightened or open and allowing of everything and being with all of it in partnership with the world, rather than by removing myself from it? There's a really interesting story about a sailor who was, I don't know if he was intentionally marooned or just like there was a shipwreck and he was the only survivor, but he ended up on a desert island that had fresh water and food and stuff. And he was found like 2-3 years later, maybe even 5 years, quite some amount of time. And when he was found, people were really like, it was quite remarkable how at peace and at ease and calm and collected they found him, as the story goes, at least. This is on a Wikipedia page. I read it. I can't remember what it is. If you look up like shipwreck survivors or something like that, you'll probably find it. And so they rescued him. They found him. They rescued him. He came off the island. He rejoined society, and then very quickly descended back into his old habits: drinking, debauchery, philandry, and getting arrested, thrown in jail, and then died. I think penniless, if I remember correctly. So that's just a good example of, if you have to leave society for you to create some kind of experience, that's fine. It's an option. But it's not what we're going here for. We're not going for remove yourself from particular circumstances so you can have an experience. It's allow life to flow through you in all of its myriad ways, do the internal work, and then share that with the world. That's the work. The final irony of this is, often when I tell people this, they listen. They're like, okay, got it. Yeah, I got to do my own work. And then they go, okay, this has been really helpful. Thanks. So what I'm really getting from this is I need to write about my work in such a way that it really connects with other people. No, your attention is still out there trying to fish for people. We can feel just like a fish can when someone is trying to hook us with something. Let go of trying to hook people. Put the attention here. Share it generously with the world. So that's what I've got for you, Micah. Andrew writes, thanks for being a stand for building a coaching business from that place, Adam. It's so true that the inner work naturally creates that connection with people. I've experienced more of that this year. It's tough to embody at all times, but truly is powerful. Yeah. That's too bad, Andrew. I'm just going to go into your question, but thanks for hanging out. To what Andrew said, it is tough to embody at times, especially because we're human. And as humans, we get scared. So sometimes we get scared like, where's the food going to come to my table from? Where am I going to get my next paycheck? And this is the other the reason that the other thing I often tell coaches is secure a stream of income. Don't sort of like quit your job, have enough money for a month, and believe you're going to create clients and then be able to do this. Because from there, you can't put the attention squarely on yourself. Your intention is going to be like, okay, I'm going to look over here, but only I'm going to do it because I need clients. And that desperation, that crazy eyes becomes, it just defeats anything that you could possibly do. So for coaches, hire a coach, make it a non-negotiable, and secure a source of income, whether that's from a line of credit that'll allow you to like live, maybe not luxuriously, but at least comfortably without having to be afraid of it, or having a spouse that can support you, or having some money in the bank that you're willing to touch on, or 401k, or whatever it happens to be. But ensure that you've got your needs met, because that allows you to really put the attention over here. Let's see what you've got here, Sachko. You'd scheduled Sachko. Hey, Sachko says, I had scheduled a conversation with a client who wants to quit this morning. Last night, I rewatched one of your videos and was ready to support them with no attachment. Well, he didn't show up. I felt resentful. Oof, that would get me too. Furthermore, I feel resentful about my agreeing to talk tomorrow as we found out that he forgot today. I'm joining your live with this energy and want to calm down. I'm going to come back to that in just a sec, Sachko. First, I want to say, hey, Inga. I hope I'm saying your name right. And Inga says, thank you for sharing your valuable insights and offering us your being in this world. Thanks, Inga. I appreciate that. Sachko, that would drive me nuts too. So one, for everyone, notice Sachko's willingness to acknowledge her own resentment. That's a big barrier in most romantic relationships. When couples come and work with Bay and I, one of the first things that we support them with is to come to an acceptance of the contempt and resentment they have for each other. That is a tall order. That requires a great deal of courage to admit that, because the dynamic in relationship is, oh, you're totally fine and I love you. Do you love me? Yes, I love you. Okay, great. Let's just keep saying that over and over and over and over and over. I would never share my resentment with you because then you're going to be upset and blah, blah, blah. Let's avoid that. And from there, right, we can't leave a place until we've been there. We can't move past our resentment. We can't move through it together. We just instead push it aside, pretend it's not going to be there, hope that it'll just magically go away. Does that ever happen with anything? I don't poo in the toilet and hope it'll magically go away. I flush it. Sorry for the disgusting scatological metaphor, but you get the idea. So, Sachko, I acknowledge you for owning your resentment of that, for allowing yourself to be human. And everyone, Sachko's a really masterful coach herself. Just notice that willingness on her part to own that. And the thing about clients that are quitting is they're scared. They are terrified. And the challenge with fear is, one, it has people act in kind of unconscious ways. Once people get scared, boom, they're on railroad tracks. They're not on a road where they can decide to turn left, decide to turn right, decide to go straight. Their choice is gone from them. They're railroaded. So that's the first thing that happens with fear. And the second thing that makes fear so challenging to be with is that when that impacts us, when their subconscious or unconscious way of showing up has an impact on us, we take it personally. Fuck you for doing this, for ghosting me, for not showing up. How dare you? And so I acknowledge you, Sachko, for being with fear, for being with your client's fear as it shows up and really standing with them. Sachko's doing a great job modeling for all of us what it means to stand for someone, to really not take their stuff too personally. And when we do, recognizing it and allowing ourselves space to just be a human ourselves, do whatever we have to do to work ourselves out so we can come back and stand for this person's possibility. Any coach that really wants to stand for creating breakthroughs and possibilities for other people does so in the face of that person's fear. When you hear coaches have clients quit and then say, I just need a bigger class of people. I need clients that are more of a challenge for me because the people I have are quitting and they're just not committed enough to their goals. What you're actually hearing is a coach that needs to do more of their own work so that they can stand without getting blasted over themselves for someone when they're afraid. That's hard work. It is not intuitive. It's quite counterintuitive. The intuitive thing to do is like tell yourself you're going to be powerful and then like tell the client, you know what? Fuck you. You've lost your chance. I'm going to be the one person in your life that doesn't put up with this. You're going to be the last, most recent person in a long line of people that have responded that exact way to this person's fear showing up and having this kind of impact in the world. The sacred responsibility of breakthrough coaching is that we be the only person in the world that doesn't get hooked into that actually stands off the court and acknowledges this person's scared and it's fucking annoying because I'm a human and it's impacting me. But they're scared and it's not personal. And I'm going to be the only person in this person's life that stands with them and lets that happen. Now, of course, you got to manage your own boundaries. You know, if someone's being violently abusive, the stand is over. You got to honor yourself. But most of us kind of confuse our boundaries with our comfort, and we put them like that. And so as soon as we're uncomfortable or feeling resentful, we throw up the B word and are like, boundaries, fuck you, I'm out. As coach, we're constantly becoming ever more nuanced with this, so that we can grow our capacity while still remaining sovereign and honoring our boundaries there. Thanks, Sechko. Great work. Andrew, who just left, asks, I'd really like to hear you talk about how our past beliefs seem to impede our future possibility. I heard Werner Erhard talk about this on a video, and it stuck with me these last 2 months. Let's put a book recommendation in here for people. Let me just grab it off my shelf because it's a big one that stays way up here in the hard to reach place. Oh, I got it. I wish this book came in a way that looked nicer, less annoying on a bookshelf. It's called Speaking Being, Werner Erhard, and the Possibility of Being Human. Look at that thing. That is a big book. Spine Test. Look at all those little book darts there showing us the good places. This book has two things. One, it's a transcript of Werner Erhard leading the Landmark Forum. You've, probably heard about the Landmark Forum. It's kind of like large group transformational work. Because it's a large group, it's impactful up to a point, but it's never going to be as impactful as like one-on-one coaching because that's just the nature, right? It's less focused, it's less on you and more delivered to a group. Nonetheless, it can create amazing transformation for a lot of people, and it can be very confronting for a lot of people. So one, you have a master, one of the granddaddies of transformation. You have an audio transcript of him working with people. That's really fascinating. And the other thing that's quite fascinating is he's a bit of an asshole throughout this. And if you hear Werner talk about this in recent times, what he shares is that at this time, historically, around the 70s or 80s, the world was very soft and gooey, and there was a lot of like just cheerleading. And so he says he was trying to, he was speaking in that way to cut through that, to have people wake up, to shock them into paying attention to him, rather than taking what he was saying and then putting into the same gooey cheerleading. Oh, great, I'm doing everything I need to do and everything's going to be great. I just need to keep believing. He's trying to wake that up. Now, reading this, you might argue, you know, I say bullshit. He's being a dickhead, and that's totally fine too. But if you can set that aside and just read and look and listen for the parts he's sharing or where he's working with people, it's really profound, some of what he says. And I'll share one of my favorite parts here, which was he's working with this person, and this person says, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of here. I feel like this is a setup, and I'm worried that I'm going to get taken advantage of. And what he says to them is, nonsense. You showed up as looking for being taken advantage of. What he means is that this person goes out into the world looking through the lens of how am I about to be taken advantage of? And then that way of being, that way they show up in the world, finds the circumstances that align with it. That's how our lens works. That's what happens. And so rather than try to tell her why he's not going to take advantage of her, he's not, I assert, but rather than get into that with her, he instead invites her to notice that tendency of hers, to go into the world looking for that, to go into the world on guard for it, and to go into the world finding places that are already set up to take advantage of her, thus proving her lens true. Really profound stuff. So if you want to read more about Werner Erhard, I recommend this book, Speaking Being. The other part of the book is it's a philosophical analysis of Werner's work and Martin Heidegger's work. Martin was one of the early ontological philosophers. I didn't find that part as interesting. So, hey, camera, get right. There we go. So I didn't read that as much, but either way, great book. I'm going to put a title here. It is Speaking Being by Bruce Hyde and Drew Kopp. Boom. So now the reason I mentioned that is because Andrew asked about Werner Erhard and said, Werner talks about how our past tends to influence our future. How does this happen? Why? Why is that the case? So let's look at relationships as a simple example. Imagine Reggie gets into a relationship with Dorothy, and in that relationship, things are great at first, but then they start to fall apart. And what happens is that Reggie finds Dorothy is like, she takes up all the space. So every conversation they get into, Dorothy is the star of the show. She's the one taking up all the space. She's the one talking. And at first, Reggie finds this really amazing. And he's like, oh, it's so cool. Like, I don't have to manage this person. I don't have to put attention towards them. They just own the room. They take up the space. It's so cool. But over time, Reggie starts to resent Dorothy. He's frustrated because, like, I want space and there's never room for me. I never get to take up space. And so Reggie and Dorothy break up. And Reggie never really does the work to clean up that wreckage of that relationship. So what happens is that Reggie's holding that like the way Dorothy showed up was wrong and was a function of being with the wrong person, rather than looking inside himself and taking a look to see like, hey, maybe the problem here is that I'm not willing to take up my space. And so, of course, I would find someone that takes up all the space, which provides the perfect reason for me not to. I would take up space if only blah, 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 blah. But Reggie doesn't do any of that. Reggie just sees the problems with his own old partner, maybe labels them a narcissist. That's very popular these days. Oh, it turned out they were a narcissist. And then goes about looking for a new partner that is not that. So now the past, the way things went in the past, dictates the person that Reggie can find. Every partner he goes with, he sort of looks and he gives them the skeptical eye and tries to figure out, is this person a narcissist? And what's going to happen is Reggie's going to end up with someone who specifically doesn't take up space, kind of like the counterpart to Reggie. If Reggie in the old relationship with Dorothy didn't take up any space and Dorothy took up all the space, now he's found someone who's a wallflower like him. Let me just think about where I want to go with this. There's a couple of paths I can see. So on the one hand, you could say, well, Reggie's found the perfect partner. He's found everything he wants from his partner. But all he's done is find the opposite of his old partner. So the past and the way it went in the past, he determines is wrong. And then what he looks for in a partner in the future is kind of a subset of what was available previous. He's no longer just looking for a woman that I love, that lights me up, that makes me feel good, that blah, blah, blah. He's looking for all that and not this. And so what happens as humans, as time goes on, we add more and more to and not that, and not that, and not that. And the reason that happens is because rather than cleaning up the past, rather than getting clear on like, oh, that was my stuff showing up there, maybe some of Dorothy's too, but like, that was me. I was unable to be with her. I wasn't willing to take up the space. I wasn't willing to ask her to let me take up space and then step into the space. I instead just held that against her resentfully. And so what ends up happening is that the possibility available to ourselves gets smaller and smaller and smaller as time goes on. You can see this with people as they age. As people age, as time passes, the stuff that people want becomes more about not that, and not that, and not that, and not that, and not that. And we end up in this very tiny little contained world about what we don't want, and it allows that much in. to the point where our possibility, what's available to us, becomes smaller and smaller, and we resign ourselves to it. We don't think that we're resigning ourselves to it. We're going to talk more about resignation in a sec. We feel empowered around it in the moment. You say, oh yeah, this is great. I've got the life that I want. I don't need to be with people that like me. I don't need people to like me. I don't need to care about what other people think. That's the sort of stuff we start to tell ourselves as our world shrinks. And what's happening is we're becoming okay with having less and less and less. And that way we justify this shrinking. So that's kind of one of the ways in which our past ends up dictating our future. Because rather than clear it out, rather than sweep that off, so it can be like, hey, there's nothing wrong with Dorothy. There was just a place that I couldn't be with. There was just a thing there for me that I wasn't really able to take on. Instead, we make it that the problem is out there. The problem is with that kind of people, and I'm going to make sure I'm never having to deal with those kind of people ever again. Now I can create from here, and then from here, and then from here. We just keep narrowing and narrowing. So I could say a lot more on this, Andrew, but I want to give you that bit, and then you can, when you watch it after the fact, let me know. Is this making sense? Is this kind of what you're speaking to? Do you want me to elaborate on something else? And all of you watching, listening, feel free if you're like, what about this? Or what about in these situations? Let me know so I can elaborate. Let's talk about resignation then and how it tends to masquerade as empowerment. And I've labeled this the stink of Zen. So how do we get into this? Most of us are pretty allergic to the idea that we might be resigned. And I think part of the reason for that is that we have a belief that we have kind of like an idea of how resignation would look. So the way we think resignation looks is like, woe is me. If only I could do this, but I can't, and I'm sad. So it's very Eeyore-y, it's very defeated, it's very like droopy dog. Is that a thing? Droopy dog? Droopy dog, sad, everything sucks. I wish that I could have more, but I can't. So there is that flavor of resignation that does exist, and you've probably been around people like that. But part of what makes ontology and leadership challenging is that it often, the stuff that's really there for us to take on does not look the way that we expect and assume it will look and expect. So resignation, more often than not, doesn't look like that stereotypical defeatist kind of approach. It looks more like, I know that I can't make more than $200,000 a year, and I'm okay with that. I know that I've just got to learn to be okay with the fact that not everyone will like me. Or that can be a bit of a cheat. I don't want to go down that path. It gives people something to argue about. So let's get a better example here. I just need to learn to be okay with the fact that not everyone's going to like me. Oh, I just did the exact same one. Let me think of something better. If I really want to be myself, some people are going to be really upset by that, and that's okay. So these are all versions of resign that occur very empowered. They occur like this sort of deep Zen-like acceptance. I can just be with whatever is. What they actually are resignation. And the way this form of resignation works is it has us give up on possibility so that we can be here in the now. So we need to get some terms on the table, some distinctions here so that we can talk about all of this stuff. Possibility is everything that I would love to have in my life that currently occurs as impossible to me. Impossible inside the way that my life is currently set up. So the example you'll often hear me use is if I am working as, say, a lawyer, and I'm making $200,000 a year working 80 hours a week, that lawyer could be like, well, I could make $100,000 a year and work 40 hours a week. Do I want to do that? I'm not sure. Or I could make $400,000 a year and work 160 hours a week. Not sure. Or some balance of those two. All of that is inside of what's predictable and available to that lawyer. But if you were to have them be like, well, what about if you made $400,000 a year and you worked 20 hours a week? That's off the scales entirely. That's not a possibility inside of their current paradigm for viewing life, for viewing their work, their career, how things go. So that's possibility. Possibility might be like, I want to meet someone and fall in love with them and have them fall in love with me on the second date, and I want to get married by the end of this year. Some people might be like, well, so that would be an example of possibility. And then the sound of resignation would be, I'm just okay with the fact that it's going to take me 3 years to find the person that I love. So I'm not pushing myself too hard. So on the outside, on the surface, doesn't that sound nice? Sounds great, right? I'm not going to push myself too hard. I'm just going to be okay. There's like that Zen-like acceptance. I'm just going to hang out here and let life do as it may. This is fine. It's important at this juncture that I make clear that this is not about making someone wrong for where they are. This is often where people start to defend, well, what's wrong with people wanting to do that? Nothing at all. There's nothing wrong with that. But we're here in a conversation about leadership. And the leader is at cause to create their life, meaning they are able to create the life they want regardless of their circumstances, as opposed to at the effect of what their life will bring them. And so when we start to work with people like this and start to ask, what do you really want? They get kind of stuck. Because in order to be okay with the way things currently are, they've had to give up on everything that they want. They've had to resign themselves to this is the way the world is, and so I will allow myself to want for everything inside of this bubble, and I will be completely content with that. The only way you can really create that is to give up on your desire. Because to have access, to be able to view and vision and want for something beyond what is currently possible for you, is to be able to sit with a degree of heartbreak. That heartbreak exists between the possibility you see and the reality that as it currently exists. That gap creates heartbreak. Maybe not heartbreak like losing a loved one to cancer or something like that, but heartbreak nonetheless. It's all a gradient. It creates a degree of angst, a degree of pain, a degree of, I really want that and I can't yet have it. Even on a minor level, it's like where you see something that you want to buy online, and instead of buying it online, you're like, I'm not going to buy that because I've spent my budget and I'm going to wait. That's being with heartbreak. That's developing some fortitude to be with the heartbreak of what you want and what you can currently have. So this kind of resignation is ultimately a strategy adopted to not have to be heartbroken, to not have to be with the pain, the feeling, the empathy of heartbreak. And the way we do that is by just being okay with things the way they are, which would be an amazing quality provided it didn't come in partnership with having to give up on everything that's possible for you. And when people are operating in this kind of resignation, what you'll notice, the way you'll spot it, is when you ask them what they want, they don't have any kind of answer. And the reason for that is they've had to give up entirely on wanting for things. They've shut that part of themselves down, that part of the human spirit that drove us out of the savannah, towards creating civilization and farming and all of this stuff. We could argue maybe stuff was better when we were just hunter-gatherers on the plains of the Serengeti. But the truth of the human spirit is that it strives to go beyond where we currently are. And so this kind of resignation is really sticky for coaches. When you deal with people like this, coaches and leaders, when you deal with people like this, what their wants will look like are often vague concepts rather than actual tangible things. Concepts like, I want more abundance. I want more connection. I want more love. Great. How? How do you want that to look? I don't know, just like more love with people. Okay, awesome. What specifically? Where specifically in your life do you want more love? I don't know, I guess like family. Okay, where? Just with my family. So that's the kind of conversation that tends to happen when we're up against someone's resignation. That's a challenging place to be. And the edge for them is to start to get really specific about what they want. And to do so, they're going to have to be willing to open up their heart and be with a little bit of the heartbreak that comes when we desire that. Okay. Talked about resignation masquerading as empowerment. Talked about not being able to leave a place until you get there. Talked about the past dictating your future. I haven't talked about projects and the power of milestones. So I think we'll finish up with that. Unless y'all have something juicy for me to talk about. I'm kind of wanting like some audience. What do you guys have? Like, give me something you're curious about. Give me a question you've been in an inquiry of. Give me something showing up for you in your life that you've just noticed that I can kind of riff on. It'd be kind of fun. I'd like to improvise a little bit with all y'all. So put something in the comments for me to chew on, please. Help me out while I talk about projects and the power of milestones. That'll be a funner way to finish. So I have a client, and I've had a few clients like this. And what this client had is we set a project up at the start of our work together. A project is, well, it's a bunch of things, but specifically it's a tangible result with a declaration by when it'll happen. So like uh, I want to have a job paying me $200,000 by March 1st, 2022. That'd be a tangible result with a declaration attached to it. And then it has a plan with milestones along the way. Milestones being like, by March 1st, I've gotten hired. By April 1st, I've had 10 interviews and I'm now choosing the job I want. By I think I've gone backwards in date order. By February 1st, I do this. By January 1st, I've called 50 different companies. So milestones along the way. So before we get even into this, I want to say that most people will resist going this far. And the reason that they'll resist going this far is because they don't like the feeling of not achieving a goal or of not achieving a milestone, which is just a smaller goal, a more manageable bite-sized chunk of goal. So people will resist it. They won't put something tangible on the line because that would mean they might fail, which is one of the other reasons that something vague and conceptual like I would like abundance is great. But imagine if you went to your board of executives or your shareholders and you were like, the thing we're going to create this year is abundance. All right, see you later. I'll stand for the applause. I'm going to leave this board meeting. They'd throw tomatoes at you, which would be quite fun. I'd like to see a board meeting like that. Maybe not, it'd be mean. But anyhow, they'd huck tomatoes at you. They'd be ridiculous because there's nothing to it, right? There's nothing to hold you accountable to. There's nothing to actually like move towards. How do we know if you're moving towards abundance? So it makes sense when we consider bringing that to a board of executives, but in terms of our own lives, we let ourselves off the hook all the time. We set these big, broad, loosey-goosey, nice sounding goals that are really more like a wish, on a penny thrown into a fountain. Sir, that's the first step when we're working with someone. And with this client, I had to do a lot of work with them to get them to get clear on what they really wanted, even if it wasn't necessarily the right thing, to make a declaration, and then to build out milestones. Now, what do you imagine might happen for someone who's got that kind of resistance to setting out milestones, to laying something on the line, possibly failing? You don't have to imagine. Like, it's a fun experiment for you to think about. Like, what do I think would be predictable for that? I'm going to tell you anyhow. They're going to naturally sort of forget about those milestones. They've set it out to their credit. And then, of course, it's just going to become like, we don't need to talk about that. Let's talk about this other thing that's more interesting rather than that looming milestone that's telling me I might have to do stuff. And so what happened is we got on our coaching call and I was asking them, what do you want to work on? And they shared a bunch of stuff. And I was like, okay, great. Can we just check in with your project? What's the current milestone? And not surprisingly, the client didn't have that handy, right? It wasn't top of mind for them, which is kind of interesting, right? The point of coaching is to support you to move tangibly towards something you want to create in your life, but it drops off, which is entirely predictable if we're in resistance to milestones because of what they represent and the fear of failing and stuff. And so they're like, oh, I've kind of bumped forward the milestone because I didn't make it. Didn't bring that forward, nothing. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, can we just spend a little bit of time looking at that? And so we started to look at like, all right, well, what happened? What's going on, first of all? And the first thought that he had was like, well, I didn't like that I didn't make it. I didn't do the stuff. So I'm just giving myself an extra 2 weeks. Is that familiar for any of you? I imagine so. That's what most of us tend to do. It's like that to-do thing that shows up on our computer. I've got like a thing, Adam, reminder, do this. And then I'm like, I'll snooze that for another week and another week and another week. You ever have anything like that? So that's that activity. Oh, I'll just bump the milestone forward. Now, There's nothing wrong with adjusting the milestone. But if we're going to do that, the real leader-like work to do is to get clear, like, well, what had it go this way in the first place? Because if we don't distinguish that, if we don't get clear on why it went the way it did, all we're going to do is bump the milestone and then do that same thing for the next 2 weeks and then get there. And then what are we going to do with that milestone? We're going to bump it forward again and do the same thing for another 2 weeks. And then we're going to go, fuck milestones. They don't seem to work. I don't want to do this. So my client could see this. They're quite a brilliant client. And they acknowledged that. And so we started to look, what got in the way? How did it go this way? What do you see showed up for you? And as we looked, initially they had resistance because most of us don't want to take a look at things that we haven't succeeded at, or things that we have succeeded at, really, for that matter. But like when it's sort of a goal we haven't hit, a milestone we haven't made, we don't want to look at why we failed at that. We just want to let's just look forward to figure out how to do this. We can't. We have to address the past, how it went. And so as we looked, he could start to see like, oh, wow, I can see, I had good thoughts and then I just didn't do any of it. And there's a point where it started to feel really like just automatic what I was doing. I was just doing stuff to check things off. I didn't feel inspired. And so I just didn't want to do it then. And as we looked at this stuff, we started to get clear, okay, great. What would support you to have it go differently next time? So using the way it went in the past, we can look to the future and start to redesign it so that he can actually achieve that milestone this time. To be clear, that requires going through some resistance. It's not like all there is to do is like, oh, got it, I got to do something different. Easy, now I'll just do something different. This client's creating a breakthrough for themselves. So what's happening is they set a milestone and then they did everything the same old way that they always have, hoping for a different result than the ones that they traditionally and predictably would get. When they get to the milestone and it didn't work, they take a look at how did it go? What happened? That didn't work. Here's what I need to do differently. And now that do differently stuff is going to require that they lean in a bit to their fear. That's why they didn't do it in the first place. So it's not free. It's not that they're just going to magically decide to do the thing, but at least now they're clear on what's going to be required. And then we can set that milestone ahead, look and make sure, hey, is that all right? What predictably is going to get in your way? Anything else you need? Are you still committed to this? Are you still present to the vision that you're up to creating? Does this project still matter to you in your life? Awesome. And then they can start to take new action towards creating it. Here's the really important thing, along with everything else that I've said for the last hour. The important thing here is that none of that conversation would have happened absent the milestone, absent my client courageously setting a declaration for himself, a line in the sand where he says, by this point, I will have achieved this. Absent him doing that, there's no conversation for us to have, because we would never get to the point where we'd say, hey, did that thing you were doing work? Instead, all you're left with when you don't set declarations and milestones is good intentions. How do you feel about how this is going? I don't know. I feel kind of on track. I feel pretty good. My client had the courage to do the scary thing and say, by this point, I will achieve this result. And then when we got there, he had the courage, after I brought it to him, to take a look and be like, well, I didn't do it. And then he had the courage to take a look at what had it go that way, and finally to set another deadline rather than just throw out the goals, the deadlines, those things, so he didn't have to feel bad about what happened. That's how transformation works. This is why projects are imperative in coaching. Not exclusively, because we always need to look at who you're being underneath it. But absent something tangible, all the conversation about being is simply masturbatory. It's the same as that hermit going and sitting in a cave and thinking and thinking and thinking and meditating and getting really calm, because they never go into the world and create anything tangible. So it's great. They may pass away and be like, my life, I got such enlightenment out of it. But the rest of the world never gets that. And leadership is about creating an impact in the world, rather than simply going inwards, transcending, and just removing yourself from the world. It's not that that's a bad thing to do. It's just not what leadership is about. Amy, thank you for being the one to share something. So Amy writes, for myself and my clients, I'd like to hear more about breaking paradigms of possibility, like having the lawyer see 400K for 20 hours a week. Sure, yeah, I can riff on that a little bit. So the hardest part of beginning this journey is for people to be willing to ask for what they really want. That lawyer we talked about, making $200,000 a year, working 40 hours a week, I think a lot of lawyers would be like, man, that sounds amazing. 40 hours a week, that's crazy low. But um, for that person and every person and all of you and me and every single human being, none of it never occurs to us like when you ask us what we want, like we're giving you an answer from inside our own limitations. It occurs to us like we're being reasonable and setting goals for ourselves that we can actually achieve because we're not dumb. I mean, I could set a crazy goal. I could set a big, hairy, audacious goal at them. Like, I want to walk on the moon free of any breathing apparatus simply by jumping and then soaring towards the moon. Is that what you want for a goal, Adam? That's the defensiveness usually shows up looking like that. So we're not looking for a goal that's flat out physically impossible as dictated by the laws of physics. We're looking for some desire that people have for something outside of what they currently believe is possible. Hey, look, my lighting just changed on me again. Nice try, lighting. I must have a timer. Oh, I do. I have a timer set in my office to change the lights to, that's very yellowy, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. It changes the lights for me at a certain point. That was shifting into like relaxed coaching lighting. I don't want that. I want intense video lighting. So it doesn't occur to us that we're giving a limited desire in that response to that question, what do you want? It occurs like we're being reasonable. And so the first point of entry for this conversation, especially when I'm working with clients and leaders, is are you willing for the duration of this conversation with me to hang out in the space that anything's possible, even if we don't know how to get it, even if we have no idea how to get it, and we can see all the reasons why we can't get it. Notwithstanding all of that, are you willing to spend an hour with me in a conversation where we hold that anything's possible? So anytime I start like an introduction, like a possibility conversation with people where we're going to break through that paradigm, that's one of the first agreements we set. We set 3 agreements. One is that we're going to have this conversation be confidential. 2 is that we both agree to come from the place that anything's possible. And 3 is that we're going to agree to lean in and be vulnerable and intimate with one another in service of having a powerful conversation. So that second agreement, I guess I should indicate 2, is the bedrock for this. Are we both willing to come from the place that anything's possible? Now, people agreeing to this doesn't mean that they can suddenly see beyond the water they swim in, but it sets us up. It sets us up on the right foot so that I can point back to that agreement and be like, hey, do you notice the limitation showing up? So from there, then we can start to be like, what do you want? And I can pretty much guarantee you for anyone I talk to that what they want is going to be a function of, it's going to be one of 2 types of wants. One is entirely trapped within the paradigm of what they see as possible for themselves. The other one is so outrageous that they never would have to hold themselves to account for achieving it. This is the kind of like, quote unquote, impossible goal, which is really like flipping a penny into a fountain and being like, I wish for peace on earth. So that kind of goal. Like I had one person where I was like, great, what do you want in a year of your life? Peace and clean drinking water in Africa. Great. How far, like, what are you doing towards that? Well, I currently work for the government doing clerical work. Nothing wrong with this goal, but like achieving that in a year, it's just so vast and so far out there that it kind of lets himself off the hook. He's not going to really commit to creating that because it's just too big. Now, we could take that and be like, great, where do you want that to be in a year? But the resistance that then shows up is they're like, oh, I don't want to make it smaller. I want that in a year. So we're always working to like bring it to the point where it's really scary for people because it's something they could actually commit to, even though they don't know how to get there, but not so impossible they'd be unwilling to commit to it. I want to be an astronaut tomorrow. You're not going to make that commitment. You're not going to rearrange your life and start showing up differently in service of that. So we want to notice how people are limiting themselves and then get really curious because in our heart of hearts, our heart doesn't really know limitations. That's our head. Our desire isn't really like, it doesn't go, well, I kind of like that idea, but X, Y, and Z, so I actually want for this. That's not how your heart works. Your heart goes, I fucking want that. I want that. I want that. This is what I want now. I want an ice cream cone. Your head mitigates it. So our head does all this filtering. And what ultimately happens is our head contains our desire. It filters it so that then what we can express, both internally and externally, is a function of filtering that desire and narrowing it inside of what our head has determined is possible and available to us. So we are kind of trying to work with people to get past that head, past what they think they can't have, to really just allowing themselves to express for the moment what they really want. What do you want? Oh, I'd love to work like 60 hours a week. Okay, no less? Well, less would be nice, but then I'd have to give up on X, Y, and Z. Well, what if you didn't? Well, I mean, that would be cool, but like that's not possible. You don't understand my profession. Okay, but hold on. If you could have anything you want, am I hearing correctly that what you'd want is to have that many hours of work a week and still make this much money? Well, yeah, but okay, great. But aside, if we were to come from the place that anything is possible, that's the thing one of the things you'd want? Yeah, totally. Great. Okay, what else? So that's the kind of conversation we're in with people, is supporting them to notice where they limit themselves and then invite them past that. No paradigm breaking can happen absent that. So we have to get clear on the tangible wants that people have. One of the ways people kind of, it's a surreptitious, sneaky way our ego kind of fools us into thinking we're going to create a breakthrough while keeping us contained, is rather than getting clear on the want and articulating it cleanly and like flatly and tangibly, it has us ask for like, I want the vague conceptual stuff. I want more ease. Great. Where? Just everywhere in my life. Okay, how? Well, I just when I'm with people, I'd be more easy. Okay, well, what's like an example of a result that would be created if you were able to create that ease? So notice what we're doing is we're taking whatever they start with and we're helping them get to the point where it becomes tangible and clear and something that we can actually work with. Because ease is not something we can make a declaration of. It's not something we could give to someone and say, hey, hold me accountable to this. And it's not something we can create milestones around. And absent being able to create milestones and declarations, it's not something we can actually track if we're moving towards, nor something that we could really create actions around. So it all starts to fall apart. So the starting point for all of it, Amy, to answer your question, is to break through the paradigm of possibility. We begin by being willing to want for and ask for that which is outside. And from there, we build projects. That's the hard part for people, because what happens, at least for me, when I start to build a project, I'm like, I can't do it. There's no way I can make it happen. And then my coach sits with me and is like, okay, well, are you willing to slow down, Adam, and like, trust that maybe that is possible? Hey, Maximilian, good to see you, man. If we came from there, what would need to happen? Well, I'd need to like get 100,000 followers by the end of the year. Okay, great. Where would you want to be 6 months before that? Well, I guess 50. Okay, and then go back, go back, go back, go back. Great. So how would you create? What are some of the ways and things you would need to do to create 10,000 followers? Oh, well, I'd need to. And then now we're at a place where we're putting rubber to pavement, because I can assure you it is possible to create 100,000 followers in a year's time. In my head, it's not. For this guy, it's not. But I know people. I've watched people speak on the topic that have done that have gone from 0 to 1 million followers, I think in a month. I believe it was Brandon Kane who spoke on this at A-Fest. And I believe he went from 0 to 1 million followers in a month. So it's possible. It's not physically impossible. There's nothing that says that can happen. I just don't know how to do it. And all of my stories and beliefs about myself tell me it's not possible. And so consequently, as a result of that, me making the declaration is the start. And that allows us to start to help me move towards it. Until I've made that declaration, all of the stuff about like, oh, I want abundance or I want freedom or whatever is a neat, really swell idea that doesn't go anywhere. It never actually gets any teeth into anything. No feet on the ground. Great question, Amy. Thank you for asking that. I don't have anything else, so I'm going to wait just a moment to see if Anna, Maximilian, or anyone else has anything that they'd like to follow up while I flip through Speaking Being here, because I've got another 15 minutes. I'd love to talk about something, but I don't have anything in particular for myself. So I'm either going to find a quote for us to finish up with, or if you guys bring something, I'm going to riff on that. Look at this video of me reading a book. You're welcome, Amy. Anna, what do you have? Please share what you've got. I would love to hear it and have a conversation around it. And while you do that, I'm just reading some of these things that I've tabbed in this book, Speaking Being. So in one, this isn't Werner, this is someone named Wes who's leading the forum at this point. But the participant says, I can see a new possibility for myself to let people know I'm afraid. And Wes, the leader at this time, shares, powerful people are afraid and have the power to communicate that when it would make a difference. Thank you. That's not how we think of powerful people. Here's another one. Human beings put bad around fear. You can't experience what we call bad because it's bad, but it's always there. You're born into fear. If you don't believe me, read the newspapers. Newspapers trade on fear. So because we label fear bad, we have to keep fear at bay. We can't let ourselves simply be afraid. Powerful people are willing to allow themselves to be afraid. They don't have to pretend that they're not. They don't have to insist that they're not. Bay and I were doing this. A fellow coach had asked us to come and do some work with an oil and gas company here in Canada. And at the event, prior to it, the night before, the person that had brought us in, the makeup of the team was there's the two coaches that brought us in, there was Bay and myself, and then there was a fifth person who was there to like teach sales. And at the dinner the night before we started, the person that had brought us in shared quite courageously, I thought, I'm nervous. I'm nervous about this. I've never done this, never brought people in. And I said, yeah, me too. I'd love to tell you I'm not, but it is. It's edgy. I don't know your people. I want them to like me. I don't know if they will. And after that meal finished, the salesperson went and talked to the two coaches that brought us in and been like, that's a real problem. Adam's really lost their trust. You need to like address this. Fortunately, those two coaches had a lot of faith in Bay and I, and were like, no, that's actually not at all what had happened. The next day, Bay and I did our thing in the morning, and then we sort of sat while something was happening, and the salesperson was soon to go on. And he was so nervous. It was remarkable. He was walking around, pacing, checking the temperature dial in the room. I've never seen someone do that. Drinking water, sitting back down, getting back up. And when one of the people that had brought us in said, hey, are you okay? He said, totally fine. So he couldn't own any of his fear whilst being totally afraid. So that's a great example, right? Where we can't leave a place until we've been there. He's got this insistence that he's not nervous. He's not nervous. He's fine. Whilst it's so evident, we can feel it in our body that he's nervous. And so when this happens, when we have it that it's bad or wrong to be a certain way we become is, we'll use fear as the example, we become the expression of being afraid while insisting we're not afraid, which is not the same thing as the expression of not being afraid or the expression of being afraid. And that creates problems. So Anna, you say, I've been curious about feeling like I reached everything I wanted, and I am part hesitant, part lost in terms of what my next vision might be. I haven't created the full practice stuff, but I feel very unstuck in terms of how to get there. It has sometimes been challenging to get coached. Curious about your take on this. Right. So what Anna's sharing is Anna's a coach. She works with her own coach. I know this. She's in the Forge with us. And what she's sharing is she's kind of feeling like right now things are going good. Stuff's moving along. What do I do? I haven't yet reached this particular result, but my hunch, my guess, Anna, from what you shared, is that you feel like you're doing the actions to do to get there. So here's what I would, if you were in a coaching conversation with me and showed up with this, here's where I would look. The first place I would look would be at your projects. So how many projects do you have and what are their milestones? Remember, for everyone, a project is simply a tangible result we're committed to creating that would be an expression of having created a particular breakthrough. I haven't used that verbiage yet, so I'll break it down a bit. A project is a tangible result that we're committed to creating that would be the expression of having achieved some kind of breakthrough. So if your client comes to you or if your direct report comes to you and says, leader, I'm committed to creating connection, great. What would be the tangible result of you having created that breakthrough for yourself? If you were able to connect with everything, what is one particular place in your life that would be especially rewarding that we would see had happened as a result of that? Some result. So that's the first place I would look at. It's like, does Anna have like 4 projects she's working on, or is it kind of like she's got one project she's committed to and then 2 or 3 that are like maybe sort of kind of there, and then one that's sort of, dragging along behind the car? What's that all looking like? Often when people are like, things are great and everything's good, it can mean that they're not really related in a powered way to their projects, or that their projects are kind of things they'll create anyhow. Their projects are results that they could create without a coach. And so then they show up to coaching and they're like, I don't have anything, because they're not really up to anything that would require support beyond their own ability to create it anyway. That's part of why I work with a coach, is so that you get the gift of creating something that you cannot create on your own. That's the first place I would look, is like, what Anna's projects look like? What are the updates there? The next place I would get curious is just like the milestones. So what's the next milestone? December 1st? Great. Are we on track to create that? Or are we not on track? So, with like the coaching practice, Anna, for example, wanting a full practice, I'd be curious, like, what's the next milestone? How's that going? Are we moving towards that? And then on the other side of all that, I might look at like, how are you relating to a coaching request? What is the sort of stuff that you bring to coaching, and what is the sort of stuff you don't bring to coaching? And how is that a reflection of the way you're relating to coaching as a whole? What's the story about a coaching request, or what you can and can't get supported on? Those would be the main sort of places I would look at, along with any patterns that I was familiar with as far as like having worked with you, as a coach for a longer period of time. Again, this is the beauty of a project, is it calls forward all of what we're up to, and then our being gets put on display. Then we can coach the being. Until we have a project, trying to coach the being is like playing pool without any holes in the table. So you can knock those balls around and have a conversation, and it makes a nice racket, and it looks like stuff's happening. You can see movement, but to what end? What are we doing any of that for? It starts to become pointless after a while. We're like, okay, well, I did that, but I'm not trying to do anything. So I'm going to go do something else because it's kind of boring. A lot of coaching that's purely being based, or only the soul line as opposed to the goal line, as some coaches say, that people tend to just grow out of it. They kind of be like, okay, well, it's been great. Thanks. I got a lot, because clients are predisposed to tell you that. Then it kind of ends there. Maximilian, you say, I'd be curious to hear about my first client and how it meant knowing what you know. Sure. So my first ever client, the benefit I had of starting as a coach was I was in, well, the gift and the curse. I was in law school. I wouldn't suggest anyone wish for this, which is a lot of work. And I was clear by the time I started training, really training as a coach, that I didn't want to be a lawyer, but I was going to need to become one. I had a bit of resistance to this for a while, but I got to the point where I was going to need to become one for a while before I could leave it full time to coach. So I had a fire under my feet. I was like, the alternative is that I'm going to go and become a lawyer. And I don't want to do that. I want to really do coaching. So I'm going to do what's scary. And I had a coach, and I had a whole bunch of support and a bunch of structure around the training program I was taking and all of that. So what I was doing is emailing or messaging everyone I was in law school with and anyone else that I would meet and be like, hey, I'm trying to become a coach. Um, are you interested in a conversation with me, a coaching conversation? No strings attached, no cost. You'll get to figure out, learn about what I'm up to, and maybe we can support you in some of whatever's going on for you. So I would just invite people constantly over Messenger because phone felt way too intimate and kind of annoying. I don't like people calling me with something like that and feel awkward. So Messenger was a little easier for me. And a lot of those people were like, sure, yeah, let's do it. And the scary thing I set for myself was I would do what I would do. Hey, Vanessa, I'd have that coaching conversation with them. And at the end, I go like, so, is this something you think you want more of or where are you at? And they'd be like, no, I think I'm good. And be like, okay, great. Is there anyone you know that you think would benefit from this conversation that you'd be willing to put me in touch with? So that was the commitment. Invite to the coaching conversation, have the coaching conversation, ask whether they would like more of this, and then ask, is there someone you know that you think would benefit from this that you would be willing to put me in touch with? Many people were like, I'll think about it. That's fine. But some people put me in touch with a few people. And so the first client, I had a coaching conversation with someone that was in law school with me. And actually, interestingly enough, he reached out after a couple of posts I'd made that were kind of the first ever posts I'd really made that were really vulnerable, where I shared my experience in the first weekend of this training program and how I'd been stripped bare and like all of what I could see and who I had been all my life and just whoa. And he reached out and was like, hey man, you and I haven't talked too much, but I really resonated with the last couple of blog posts you posted recently, and just wondering if you want to have a conversation with me. And I was like, oh yeah, totally. So we had that conversation. He wasn't really interested in coaching at the time, but he put me in touch with his wife. Said, I think you might really enjoy talking with her. And I talked with her, and I did the same thing. And she was also not really interested, but she put me in touch with another person that she thought would be really good. And so that person, we did the same thing. And I had the conversation with him. And I said, so are you interested? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, yeah, well, I'd love to know, like, what does it look like? What does it cost? And so I said, okay, it looks like, we work for at least 3 months. It costs $500 a month. That's what my rates were at that time. And we talk 4 times a month for an hour each time. And I said, so just let me know, take your time to think about it and give me a call and let me know. And at this point, I would have stayed with him in the conversation to like, hey, what's showing up for you now that I've shared that? What's going on? What changed for you when you heard the cost? All of these questions, I would hang out with the client in their discomfort. But back then, I was way too fucking scared. There's no way I was going to do that. I wanted to get off that phone immediately, which is why I did that. So this is not what I would coach someone to do now, but what my fear was willing to let me do. What I was willing to do from my fear was, see ya, hang up the phone. I got that far. And then we went into a weekend. And then on Monday, I was at home playing video games, I think, or doing something, and my phone rang. And I looked at the caller ID, and it was this person. And I left the phone. I was not going to pick up the phone because I was terrified. And he left a message on my answering machine, and he said, you know what? I'm ready to do this, man. I think this is going to be the thing. I'm really excited. I'm looking forward to it. Let's do this. And so despite a bunch of things along the way where I really kind of went out of my way to avoid what would be a more powerful experience for both he and I, that was the first client I ever created from that conversation. And it's worth saying that woman, the wife of the guy who was in law school with me, I think I got 3 or 4 clients from her just being stoked and being like, what you're up to is awesome. And I love that conversation. I think this person would really benefit from it. And I met someone walking my dogs in my building who I think would really love this. And I'm going to put you in touch with them. Now, there's a lot of people that I have that conversation with and I never hear from them ever again. I'll think about it. Oh, I'm definitely going to think about it and put you in touch. And they don't. And that's okay. But every now and then you'll meet someone who's really stoked and really like just loves the conversation they have with you and will put you in touch with a bunch of people. So that was the first client I ever created, Maximilian, was from being willing to invite, create a coaching conversation with them, and at the end, being willing to propose or at least ask, are you interested in more of this? And then when they said no, great. Is there anyone else you know that you think I should talk to that you'd be willing to put me in touch that would enjoy this conversation? And from that, a lot can get created. A tremendous amount can get created. Well, my whole career, and everything I do now, all of this was created from that humble willingness to do what was quite terrifying. I'll share one last story to finish up. Some of you may have heard this story before. This is a story about being willing to, it's a story about being committed to something and how our commitment has us willing to step over our fear and why a project is important. A commitment to something tangible is important. So my commitment, super clear, was a coaching practice making, I think at the time it was like $30,000 a year, and probably with like 50 people. It was like something like that. Probably closer to like 15 people and making $30,000, something like that. And so I was very committed to that. I had a project set up around it. My coach and I worked with that. She supported me. I didn't make that milestone. Great. What got in the way? All of that. We were very much working on both my action and who I was being underneath. And one of the CEO actually of the training company that I was going through and who I later worked with for about 4 years and has made a profound impact to my life, named Christopher McAuliffe. He, while leading the program I was taking, told a story. And his story was about how he was sitting in a coffee shop and he was just working away on something and he overheard these two women behind him talking about, oh, it's so difficult to, I wish it was easier, blah, 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 blah. And he turned around to them and he said, I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but overhear you. I support people with that professionally, with all that sort of stuff. I'm a coach. Are you interested in a conversation about that? They said no. And then he told us, you would be amazed. You know, I charge thousands of dollars for this kind of work. You'd be amazed how many people just are a flat out no to it. So that was his story. And I found myself sitting in a coffee shop, working, hearing behind me the voices of two women talking. And they were talking at the time about how hard it was to tithe. I guess they were, I think that's a Christian practice, maybe even like Pentecostal or something like that. Some other sects too. Tithing is usually donating 10% or some sum of your salary to the church. And so they were talking about like, yeah, it's really difficult. Like I want to tithe, but it's challenging. It's hard to make everything work. And so in my head, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk to them about this. I don't want to turn around. That's so obnoxious and awkward. But one, this man had created a clearing for me because he had done that in his own life and shared about it with me. Two, I was really clear that I was committed to filling my coaching practice and that that might require me doing things outside of what I was already comfortable doing. Now, if my goal, if my project had been some loosey-goosey, like I'm committed to connection, I'll tell you what would have happened in that moment. I would have sat there, remembered the story, and been like, oh, I should connect. I'm going to reach out and connect to some more people, and then done that the exact same way would have been comfortable connecting with whoever else any other time. There's no way I'm going to turn around and start talking to them in service of just having more connection in my life. That's way too scary. But I was very clear on my commitment to not practice law long term and to become a coach. And so I turned around and I said, I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but overhear. To which both of them had this look on their face. Who's this fucker eavesdropping on us? I'm so sorry. I couldn't help but overhear. I'm a coach and I support people with that kind of stuff professionally. Are either of you interested in a conversation about that? No, no, thank you. Great. So sorry to interrupt. Turn around. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I can't believe I did that. But I did that. I did that because of the project and the commitment that I had. Interestingly enough, afterwards, as they were leaving, one of them stopped and said, what is a coach anyhow? And the profound thing about that is that connection was opened up in that moment. That woman was a yes to conversation with me. Now I screwed it up. Well, I don't know if I screwed it up, but at that point, I let my fear get the best of me. And I was like, well, let me give you my card. And if you ever want to talk about it, I'm happy to do so. Just send me an email, give me a call. That was the end of that. But the opportunity was there in that moment. And if I were to go back there to answer your other question, Maximilian, I probably would have just told her, oh yeah, well, here's how it is. This is what I do. People are up to certain things in their life, but the stuff that's impossible, and I support them to create what seems impossible for them. All of that made possible because of the power of declarations, commitments, projects. So I don't know if they remember that conversation or not, but I sure as hell do. And that now I have that story to tell. Okay, let's have a final sip of tea together. We're going to turn off our ceremonial live show lamp. Are you ready? Off it is. Bring that wick back up. Look at that cute little wick. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. Amy, Anna, Maximilian, thanks for bringing what you brought. Thanks everyone else who tuned in and showed up. Andrew, Micah, thanks for your suggestions. I'm hopeful that our weather stays kind of nice. I'm told it won't. I hope that your weather stays nice. Love you all. Have yourself a fantastic weekend. Bye-bye. Whoop, I got to click this.